The moon rose softly over the land of U, painting the ruined towers and glass-still lakes in hues of silver. Somewhere in the quiet, beyond the bustling candy villages and shadowy forests, there was a melody, so faint it might have been only the sigh of the wind. It was not sung, yet it carried the tenderness of a lullaby. Pause. A song once whispered to a child who grew up too quickly, who had to learn how to be strong before she could truly be small. Marceline, the vampire queen, with her base cradled against her like an anchor, often found herself tracing the edges of memories. Some were sharp and bright, the laugh of her human mother, the strange warmth of Simon's gloved hand as he reached down to her in a world that was falling apart. Others were scattered, broken, too heavy to lift. What would it mean if she could gather them all? Every smile, every tear, every forgotten lullaby restored, whole, unbroken. The question floats like mist. What if Marceline remembered everything? The heart of memory is fragile. It does not move in straight lines. Instead, it spirals, circling back through scents and sounds. The smell of firewood, the metallic taste of blood, the gentle strum of a string, all are portals. For Marceline, fragments are both treasure and curse. She remembers Simon before the crown and Simon after. She remembers hunger and she remembers love. But the spaces between those memories are like cracks in a stained glass window. Imagine for a moment if the glass had never cracked, if the great catastrophe of forgetting had never come. She would hold the full spectrum of her life uninterrupted. Would it heal her or drown her? Memory is both a song and a silence. Like music, it is defined not just by notes but by pauses. To remember everything might be like trying to play a symphony without rest, without breath, without space for silence. Could the melody still be beautiful, or would it collapse under its own weight? The philosophers of old, those who spoke in dreamlike riddles, might have said that forgetting is not always a failing, but a gift. To let go is to make room. Yet Marceline, drifting between centuries, knows the cost of forgetting too well. Each lost memory is not only hers, but a piece of U's unwritten history. What if she could call them all back? Her mother's lullabies, the early years of flame and frost, the faces of those who perished in the mushroom war's quiet ashes. Would she be closer to truth or further from peace? Close your eyes now. Pause. Picture her sitting atop a lonely cliff, bass guitar in hand. Her legs swing into the endless air. Below her stretches the forest, a sea of black trees swaying as though they too listen. She plucks one string, then another. Each note summons a memory. First, the face of her mother, warm eyes tired but unbroken. Second, Simon kneeling in the snow, offering a teddy bear. Third, the hollow silence of a bunker, shadows whispering of hunger. But now, imagine if the sequence did not stop. Imagine if every moment of her 1,000 years returned in sequence, every friend lost, every promise broken, every fear she never named. Could any soul withstand such fullness? Or would it be like staring into the sun, blinded not by darkness but by too much light? There is a paradox in Marceline's story. The very memories that wounded her are the ones that shaped her into the queen of shadows and songs. If she remembered everything, perhaps her music would change. No longer fragmented ballads of longing, but an overwhelming ocean of history. Her voice would not just be her own, it would be the voice of eras, of a world torn and reborn. Would listen? Could they bear to hear it? Perhaps the candy people, in their simple joy, would grow quiet, realizing that beneath their sugar-coated kingdom lies a history of sorrow. Perhaps Princess Bubblegum, ever the scientist, would finally see that Marceline's pain was not just personal, but the echo of humanity's fall. The Lich too might tremble, for memory is resistance. To forget is to weaken, but to remember is to stand. What weapon could be sharper than a truth no time can erode? And yet, We must ask, would Marceline herself want such completeness? In the small hours of night, when the stars hover like distant lanterns, she curls herself under blankets that smell faintly of old earth and dust. She whispers songs to herself. She lets gaps remain. Sometimes, forgetting is a form of kindness, a lullaby gifted by the universe to protect her heart. If she remembered everything, perhaps she would never sleep again. Perhaps she would walk the nights endlessly, searching for a silence that no longer exists. Memory is a forest. To walk it is to risk losing yourself. Some paths lead to light-filled clearings. Others spiral endlessly into brambles. If Marceline remembered every path she had taken, she would also remember every path she had lost.
How many doors closed before she even knew they existed?
How many friends could have been saved if only she had turned left instead of right? Such remembering could crush her with what-ifs, but it could also lift her, showing her that even in 1,000 branching ways, she always found music. And music is survival. Music is defiance. The forgotten lullaby returns again. Not the actual words, for words are too fragile, but the feeling, warm arms, a safe rhythm, a voice humming in the half-dark. Marceline has chased that feeling all her life, not knowing she still carries it within. If she remembered it fully, would she stop searching? Or would the search itself lose meaning? This is the paradox of remembrance. It promises peace but may take away purpose. To remember, everything could mean to have no reason left to seek, no emptiness left to fill.
Could Marceline still sing if she no longer longed?
And so as the night stretches on, the wind carries her melody across the sleeping land. Listeners do not know what they are hearing, only that it soothes them like rain against the roof. Marceline herself does not know whether she sings to remember or to forget. What if she remembered everything? The question cannot be answered, not fully. It lingers like the final note of a lullaby, vibrating softly in the chest. Pause. For now, she lets the song fade into silence, and with that silence, we drift toward the next wondering. If memory is a weight and a gift, what happens when love itself is remembered without limit? The night deepens. The stars above shimmer like frozen sparks, suspended in a vast stillness. Somewhere in this celestial hush, the world breathes, trees shift in their sleep,
rivers murmur against their banks.
And at the heart of it all, Marceline sits cross-legged upon an ancient stone, her bass guitar across her lap. She is not playing tonight. Instead, she listens to the silence, to the hum of distant memories, to the pulse of her own restless heart. Pause. Love is the thread that runs through all her stories. It is her greatest anchor and also her greatest wound. What if she remembered every instance of it, every tenderness, every fracture, every ache? To hold the totality of love without forgetting a single moment is to hold a weight almost too vast for mortal or immortal hands. Love is not simple for Marceline. It has worn many forms: the maternal warmth of her human mother, the steadfast but tragic devotion of Simon, the tangled friendship and yearning of Princess Bubblegum. Each carries its own color, its own taste. To remember them all would be to carry a palette too bright for the eyes. Yet imagine if she did. Imagine if not one act of love, not one word spoken in care, slipped into the void of forgetting. Would she walk through eternity strengthened by it, or bent beneath its heaviness? Philosophers once mused that love is both a blessing and a binding. To love is to be tethered. To remember love eternally is to feel each knot of that tether tighten, pulling you back to moments you cannot change. Marceline, in her centuries of wandering, has often been grateful for the haze of memory that dulls the sharper edges. It allows her to laugh again, to sing, to drift, but if she remembered it all, every break in Simon's voice as he promised to protect her, every glance from Bubblegum that lingered with words unsaid, her heart might never unclench. Love, when unforgotten, is not merely sweetness. It is also loss preserved, longing crystallized. Picture her wandering through the ruins of the world that was, the skeletal remains of playgrounds, the cracked foundations of cities swallowed by roots and moss. To recall every moment of love within these places would be to see them not as ruins, but as altars, each stone a reliquary of connection. Would such memory make her cherish them, or haunt her endlessly with what once was? What if she stood at the edge of the broken freeway and remembered not just the cold of abandonment, but her mother's hand holding hers on that same road long before the bombs fell? Could she bear the double vision, ruin and warmth, devastation and embrace, existing in one place?
Love is heavy precisely because it does not stay still.
It transforms, shifts, slips through fingers. Marceline's love for Simon turned from gratitude to fear, then to sorrow, then to a kind of forgiveness. Her bond with Bubblegum, too, flickered between closeness and distance, light and shadow. To remember all those shifts would be to hear an endless symphony of variations, never resting in a single theme. Perhaps it would be overwhelming, yes, but perhaps it would also be clarifying. For if she remembered each change, she would know fully how love survives, not by being constant, but by adapting like water finding its way through cracks of stone. Close your eyes with her for a moment. Pause. Imagine she recalls the day Simon placed a teddy bear in her arms. The weight of it was more than fabric and stuffing. It was a promise, a vow that she was not alone. Now imagine she remembers with perfect clarity the day he first failed to keep that promise. His eyes distant, his voice no longer his own, the crown shimmering with cruel frost. To hold both memories together without dulling either is to carry both hope and heartbreak forever. Is that not the true weight of love remembered?
Love is also rebellion.
Marceline's songs, whether playful or melancholic, are defiant acts. To sing of love is to insist that it existed, that it mattered, that it still echoes. If she remembered every act of kindness ever shown to her, she could turn each into a verse, a chorus, a melody strong enough to outsing despair. The land of Ooh, in all its strangeness, might shift beneath such music. Candy people would stop and weep, not knowing why. Flame Princess might feel a warmth that had nothing to do with fire. Even the Ice King, shrouded in his fractured mind, might feel a flicker of the man he once was. Would love, remembered perfectly, become a weapon against sorrow? Or would it become sorrow itself, sharpened beyond endurance? Consider, too, the loves she never named. The small kindnesses, a stranger offering food, a passing smile in the wreckage of the old world, a child who laughed at one of her songs. If she remembered every single one, no matter how fleeting, would she drown in their multitude, or would she discover that love is more common than she ever dared to hope? Perhaps the truth lies there, in the realization that love is not rare, but constant. It is woven through every life, often unnoticed. To remember everything would be to see that tapestry without gaps. Beautiful, yes, but unbearably vast. There is a paradox here. To forget is painful because it erases connection. But to remember is also painful because it freezes connection, refusing to let it soften with time. What then is mercy, to forget or to remember? Marceline does not know. She only feels the ache of what is half remembered and wonders what it would be like to feel the ache of it all. Perhaps forgetting is a gift the heart grants itself, a necessary thinning of the weight so that we may keep walking. Yet perhaps, if she remembered, her steps would not falter but grow stronger, each one grounded in the certainty that she has been loved and has loved in return. Tonight, the wind carries no song but the possibility of one. Marceline leans back against the stone, her eyes half closed. She imagines for a moment what it would be like if every memory of love rose up inside her at once. Her mother's lullaby, Simon's trembling smile, bubblegum steady hands at a lab bench.
Even the silly laughter of Jake or Finn in moments of play. The thought makes her chest swell as though she cannot contain it.
It hurts, and yet it is sweet. Perhaps this is the closest she can come to remembering everything, not the exact words, not the perfect faces, but the sense of being carried by an endless current of care. And so the chapter closes on a gentle uncertainty. What if Marceline remembered every act of love? Would it crush her under its weight, or lift her higher than the stars? Pause. In truth, perhaps the answer is both. Love remembered is heavy, yes, but it is also the only weight worth carrying. And as she drifts into the night, we turn softly to the next wondering. For if love remembered is heavy, what of sorrow remembered? What of grief that never fades, never blurs, never allows healing? The forest grows darker, the stars brighter. We move now step by step toward grief's shadow. The moon has shifted now higher in the sky, washing the land in pale light. Shadows stretch long across the hills, reaching toward the sleeping forests. Pause. In the hush of night, grief feels nearer, as though it has its own heartbeat, echoing faintly beneath the soil. Marceline knows this sound well. She has lived long enough to recognize grief not as an intruder, but as a companion who walks beside her through the centuries. What if she remembered every grief in its full clarity?
Every separation, every betrayal, every empty room.
Would she still sing to ease her pain, or would her voice break beneath the enormity of sorrow? To carry grief unforgotten is to shoulder a burden that never lessens, only grows. And yet perhaps within such remembrance lies a strange form of wisdom. Grief is not a single moment. It is a river. It begins with a small spring, an absence, a goodbye, a sudden silence, and then flows outward, gathering tributaries as life continues. Marceline has known so many tributaries. The loss of her mother, the slow erosion of Simon into the Ice King, the long years of solitude where the sky itself seemed empty. Forgetting softens grief, turning rivers into shallow streams. But to remember them fully, vividly, is to hear the roar of the flood at all times. Imagine walking through life while every grief you've ever felt whispers at once. Would the weight of it drown her, or would it teach her to float upon sorrow's surface, learning its rhythms like waves? Close your eyes now. Pause. Imagine Marceline standing in the ruins of an old house, walls crumbling, ivy climbing across broken windows. She remembers the laughter that once filled the space, the scent of bread baking, the warmth of a fireplace. And then she remembers the silence after, when the world grew cold and empty. To recall both with perfect clarity is to feel a wound that never closes. Yet what is grief but love enduring? To grieve is to honor what mattered even when it has passed. If Marceline remembered every grief, she would also remember every love that gave birth to it. Perhaps grief, unforgotten, is not merely a shadow, but a lantern, a painful reminder of all the lights that once burned. The philosophers of U might say that grief is a kind of timekeeper. It marks where joy once stood, preserving moments that might otherwise vanish. But to remember grief without end is to live in a world where the clock never moves forward, where every sorrow remains as sharp as the day it was first cut. Would Marceline wish for such memory? She has already carried centuries. Would unbroken grief bend her into silence, or would it forge her into something unshakable? Consider Simon. His loss is not a single event, but a long unraveling. To remember every step of it, his warmth fading, his words slipping, the growing distance in his eyes, would be unbearable. And yet, if she remembered it all, she might also see the hidden strength of his love, preserved even beneath the crown's curse. Grief, then, would not only be sorrow but a testament. To grieve without forgetting is to testify that someone mattered enough to hurt forever. Is it better to let wounds scar, to dull with time, or to keep them raw as proof of love's depth? Grief is heavy, yes, but it is also strangely alive. It moves like wind through the trees, bending but not breaking them. Marceline's songs often carry this quality, half sorrow, half resilience. To sing of grief is to give it shape, to make the invisible ache into sound. If she remembered every grief, perhaps her music would become an endless dirge. Or perhaps it would become something even greater. A symphony vast enough to hold the whole world's mourning. Imagine her standing on a cliff, bass in hand, summoning every grief she has ever felt into a single song. The air would tremble, the ground would hum, even the stars might dim to listen. Would such a song be too heavy for others to hear, or would it free them, reminding every soul that they are not alone in their sorrow? But grief has another face, regret. To remember every sorrow is also to remember every choice that might have prevented it. The times she turned away, the words she never spoke, the friends she could not save. Memory, in this form, is not just painful, but accusing. Could she bear the weight of every regret echoing at once? And yet, regret too has its purpose. It teaches us the shape of our hearts. It shows us where we longed to love more deeply, where we faltered, where we grew. To remember regret fully might not be to drown, but to learn. Perhaps Marceline, if she carried all her griefs unforgotten, would become not weaker, but more compassionate, more attuned to the sorrows of others. Let us picture her walking through the nightosphere, the realm of her father. It is a place filled with screams and shadows, yet even here grief lingers, whispered in corners. If she remembered every grief in her heart, she might see the nightosphere differently, not as punishment, but as a mirror. Every demon's cry is an echo of her own. Every shadowed corner holds a reflection of her pain. Would this bring despair or empathy? Perhaps both. Grief is not the enemy of joy. Strange though it seems, they walk hand in hand. To grieve deeply is to have loved deeply. If Marceline remembered all her grief, she would also remember all her joys. The two cannot be separated. They are two notes in the same chord. So perhaps the true danger is not remembering grief, but forgetting it. For to forget grief is to forget that love once burned brightly. To carry grief is to keep the flame alive, even if it flickers in sorrow. Tonight, as the stars burn brighter, Marceline leans back on the grass and lets her mind drift. She remembers fragments of grief, her mother's absence, Simon's slow decline, arguments with bubblegum, nights of loneliness. They come like waves, one after another. She wonders what it would be like if there were no pause, if the tide never ebbed. Would she still float, or would she sink? The question has no answer, and perhaps that is the lesson. Grief unforgotten is not a puzzle to be solved, but a shadow to be walked with. And so we end this chapter where we began, in the quiet of night. Marceline's grief is both her burden and her lantern. If she remembered every sorrow, her heart might break anew each day. Yet in that breaking there would also be beauty, the beauty of a soul that refuses to stop feeling. Pause. We leave her now, lying beneath the stars, her eyes half closed, her guitar resting beside her. Tomorrow she may sing again, turning grief into melody. But tonight she simply breathes, carrying her shadow, quietly. And from grief we step softly toward the next wondering. If sorrow unforgotten weighs so heavily, what of time itself? What if Marceline remembered not only moments of love and loss, but every fragment of eternity she has lived? The stars keep their vigil, and we move toward the endless corridors of memory. The night deepens further, and the stars above stretch like silver threads across the velvet sky. In the distance, a faint aurora ripples, bending color into motion, a reminder that time itself is never still. Pause. Marceline stands at the edge of a vast plain where ruined highways meet tangled forests, and for a moment she feels the pull of centuries around her. For a vampire queen, time is not merely a backdrop. It is a companion, sometimes tender, sometimes cruel. But what if Marceline remembered all of it? Not fragments, not the highlights, not the half-faded images softened by forgetting, but every moment of her centuries of wandering, every hour of waiting, every dawn and dusk she ever witnessed, every silence.
Every second, would she be a queen of memory as well as of shadows?
Or would she be crushed beneath eternity's endless corridors? Time is strange when lived too long. For mortals it is a stream, swift, precious, always carrying them forward. But for Marceline it has been more like a vast ocean. Some days drift lazily, others crash like storms, and in between lie stretches of stillness so deep they feel bottomless. Forgetting allows her to skip across this ocean like a stone. She touches only the moments that matter, the loves, the losses, the laughter. But to remember every ripple, every wave would be to sink beneath the surface, pulled down by the sheer volume of existence. Imagine it. To recall what you ate 1,000 years ago, the exact smell of the air on a forgotten Tuesday, the sound of a bird's wing in a season that no longer exists. What would it mean to live with such clarity? Would it be a gift of divine perspective or a prison with no escape? Close your eyes now. Pause. Picture Marceline wandering an endless hallway. Its walls are made of shifting glass, and within each panel lies a memory. Some are joyful. The first time she strummed her bass, a smile from bubblegum that softened even the hardest day. Others are darker, hunger gnawing at her belly, the loneliness of an empty room, the sound of bombs falling in the distance when the world first ended. But most of the panels show neither joy nor sorrow. They are ordinary, simple, unremarkable moments, brushing dust from her shoes, humming idly to herself, watching a cloud drift across the sky. To remember everything is to realize how vast the ordinary truly is. Could she walk this hallway forever without losing herself in its endless mirrors? Time without forgetting is not linear. It is overwhelming. Imagine if every moment of your life pressed against you all at once, as though the past never receded but stood beside you, whispering, reminding, demanding to be felt again. Marceline, who has lived through wars and silences, would hear a cacophony of voices, thousands of versions of herself, each carrying a fragment of time. Would such remembering grant her wisdom, a map of existence more complete than any mortal mind could hold?
Or would it fracture her, shattering her into countless selves, none able to rest?
The philosophers who mused in towers of crystal and caves of moss often asked, is forgetting necessary for identity? If you recall every moment, every word, do you still have the freedom to choose who you are today? Or are you forever bound by the weight of who you were? If Marceline remembered everything, perhaps she would no longer be able to grow.
Every mistake would cling to her, every triumph would freeze her in place.
She would be not a flowing river but a lake of glass, still reflective but unable to move forward. And yet, perhaps such remembering would also bring her peace, for in holding all of time, she might finally understand its pattern, its rhythm, its hidden design. Consider the seasons of Ooh. Each spring brings blossoms, each winter, snow. But each is unique, no matter how similar they seem. If Marceline remembered every winter she had ever endured, would she still marvel at the first snowflake? Or would wonder be replaced by weariness? Time, when fully remembered, threatens to dull the newness of things. For what is novelty but forgetting dressed in fresh colors? To recall everything might strip the present of its mystery. But perhaps it would also reveal something deeper. That mystery lies not in novelty, but in continuity, in seeing how each moment echoes another across centuries. Let us picture her now, lying on her back in the grass, gazing up at the constellations. She remembers the same stars 1,000 years ago, when the world still burned with the last echoes of the Mushroom War. She remembers them again 500 years later, when she sat alone by a campfire singing softly to herself. And she remembers them tonight, unchanged yet different, because she herself has changed. To remember all of these stargazings at once is to realize that time is less a straight line and more a circle, a spiral, a rhythm. Perhaps, if she remembered everything, she would no longer fear time at all. She would see it not as something stolen, but as something woven, a tapestry in which she has always been a thread. But there is danger in remembering too much.
Time can erode even the strongest heart.
To carry centuries without softening them with forgetfulness might turn her into stone, unyielding, incapable of being surprised. Her laughter might fade, her songs might lose their spark, because nothing could feel new. What is music, after all, if not the discovery of feeling? And yet, perhaps her music would become something else entirely. Not a song of novelty, but of eternity. A hymn that does not need to be new because it carries all that ever was. Listeners might hear in her notes not just one moment, but the echo of thousands. It would be overwhelming, but also transcendent. Time remembered fully is heavy, yes, but it is also revealing. For within the corridors of memory lies the truth that nothing is ever lost. Every kindness, every tear, every song still exists, held within the folds of time. If Marceline could access all of it, she might find comfort in knowing that nothing truly fades. Even the smallest moments still breathe somewhere, waiting to be recalled. Would that knowledge soothe her or torment her? Would she smile at the permanence of love or ache at the permanence of pain? Tonight, as the aurora fades and the stars begin their slow drift toward dawn, Marceline rises from the grass. She walks slowly, as though each step carries the echo of 1,000 others she has taken across centuries. Perhaps she feels the weight of it. Perhaps she does not. The corridors of time remain endless, but she chooses which doors to open. Maybe that is the mercy of forgetting. It allows us to walk forward without dragging every ghost behind us. And yet, the question lingers like the last note of a fading song. What if she remembered everything? Would she still be herself? Or would she become something larger, something timeless, something beyond the reach of loss and love alike? Pause. We leave her at the threshold of these endless corridors, her hand resting lightly on the door. And as she lingers there, another wondering arises. If memory holds love, grief, and time itself, what of identity? Who would Marceline be if she remembered every self she has ever been? The dawn trembles faintly at the horizon, but the night still holds. We step quietly onward into the next reflection. The night lingers, soft as velvet. A pale mist drifts across the land, weaving through the branches of the forest like threads of silk. Pause. In that mist, reflections form. Shapes that resemble faces, hands, the outlines of lives long lived. Marceline watches quietly, knowing that these are not ghosts of others, but fragments of herself. Identity is never singular. It is layered, shifting, sometimes fractured. Marceline has been many things, a child clutching her toy bear in the ruins of the old world, a daughter both cherished and abandoned, a friend, a wanderer, a queen, a rival, a lover. Each self is true, yet none are the whole. What if she remembered every self she has ever been with perfect clarity? Not just fragments, not just impressions softened by centuries, but every detail of every identity she has worn. Would she still know who she is now, or would she be lost in the mirror of her own selves? The self is a river, ever-changing, but memory makes it feel like a chain of pearls, each bead distinct, each polished with the shine of recollection.
If Marceline held every bead at once, the necklace might strangle her.
Or perhaps it would adorn her, giving her a clarity no one else could imagine. Imagine remembering yourself as a small child, afraid, hungry, clutching at Simon's coat. then remembering yourself as a fiery teenager, rebellious, fierce, desperate to prove strength, then again as a queen declaring power, hiding loneliness behind sharp smiles. If all these selves stood side by side in her mind, what harmony or dissonance would they create? Close your eyes for a moment. Pause. Picture her gazing into a lake at midnight. The water is still, and upon its surface she sees not one reflection, but many layered over each other. A child's wide eyes, a young woman's scowl, an immortal's tired gaze. The reflections shimmer, shift, overlap. Would she be comforted by this chorus of selves, reminded that she has survived every transformation? Or would she feel fractured, unable to decide which reflection is real? To remember every self is to lose the mercy of forgetting who we once were. The philosophers often said, to grow is to let go of past selves, to allow them to fade into the soil from which new selves rise. But if Marceline remembered every self perfectly, she could never let them fade. She would be forced to carry them all. Would that make her infinite or trapped? Consider the battles she fought, not only with others, but with herself. The part of her that longed for connection against the part that pushed it away. The part that wanted to trust versus the part that feared betrayal. Each conflict created a new self, a new mask. If she remembered them all, she would also remember every wound she inflicted upon herself. Yet within those wounds lies growth. Each self was a stepping stone, carrying her closer to who she is now. To remember them all might be painful, but it would also be affirming. She has never been static, never truly lost. She has always been moving. Identity is fragile when stretched across centuries. Mortals tie their sense of self to fleeting spans of years, but Marceline has endured lifetimes. If she remembered all her identities perfectly, she might begin to see herself less as a single being and more as a constellation, each star a self, each connected by threads of experience. A constellation does not need to choose one star. It is beautiful because it contains many. Perhaps that is the gift of such remembering.
Not confusion, but acceptance.
To see that she is not one self, but many, all of them valid, all of them hers. Still the danger lingers, for identity is also choice. Who we are is not only what we have been, but what we decide to become. If Marceline carried every self vividly, would she still feel free to choose? Or would the weight of her past selves bind her, whispering too loudly to allow change? Imagine the child in her begging for protection, the rebel demanding defiance, the queen insisting on power, the lover yearning for tenderness. To remember them all might mean being pulled in every direction at once. Would she lose the quiet voice of her present self beneath their clamor? But perhaps she would learn to listen differently, to treat her past selves not as chains but as companions, each with their wisdom, each with their flaws. The child reminding her of innocence, the rebel reminding her of fire, the queen reminding her of responsibility, the lover reminding her of vulnerability. If she remembered them all, maybe she would walk with them like a council of stars, guiding her rather than binding her. Let us picture her again, this time in her room, surrounded by relics of her long life. A worn teddy bear, photographs, old instruments, scraps of drawings. Each object is a mirror, reflecting a self she once was. Tonight she does not push them aside. Instead, she arranges them around her, as though inviting each self to sit with her. The room fills with quiet presence. She feels the weight of it, but also the strength. Every self she has been still lives here in her, singing softly. To remember them all is overwhelming, yes, but it is also a reminder that she has never been alone, not even within herself. The mirror of identity is endless, reflecting reflections within reflections. To remember everything would be to stand in the middle of that infinity, surrounded on all sides by selves, some smiling, some weeping, some raging, some quiet. Could she stand in that hall of mirrors without losing herself? Perhaps. For maybe the truest self is not any single reflection, but the one who gazes at them all, aware, compassionate, unafraid. Tonight, as the mist clears and the stars begin to fade toward dawn, Marceline rests her bass across her knees. She strums a single chord, and it reverberates through her, through every self she has ever been. It is not discordant. It is a harmony, unexpected, fragile, but real. What if she remembered every self she has ever been? The answer may be this. She would realize that she is not broken by multiplicity, but completed by it. Every self is hers, and together they form a song that only she can sing. Pause. The mist lifts, revealing the road ahead. We follow her, carrying with us the image of the mirror that holds not one face but many. And as we step onward, another question arises. If memory reveals the self in its fullness, what does it reveal about others? What if Marceline remembered not only herself but everyone she has ever known? The dawn is near now, but the night still holds space for wonder. We drift gently into the next reflection. The night has stretched thin like silver thread across the horizon. In that tender space before dawn, the air feels heavy with memory, as though the stars themselves are whispering names. Pause. Marceline walks slowly through the meadow, and with every step she sees not flowers, but faces blooming in the grass. They are the faces of everyone she has ever known. Friends,
Enemies, strangers whose names she never caught, loved ones lost to time.
the meadow glows with them, thousands of faces turning toward her as if she were the sun. She stops. She cannot look away. For this is the question that rises now. What if Marceline remembered everyone perfectly? Not only their features, but the stories behind their eyes. We often think memory is kind to us, that it forgets enough to make life bearable. But what if nothing was ever forgotten? Every friend who laughed with us, every stranger who brushed past us in silence, every hand we held, every hand we struck away. If Marceline remembered every face and every moment with them, she would live among countless ghosts, not echoes, but vivid presences pressing in on her from all sides. The meadow would never end. The faces would follow her wherever she went. Think of Simon, the man who once was her guardian, her fragile anchor in the collapse of the old world. She remembers him already in fragments, the warmth of his hand, the trembling of his voice, the way he hid his despair behind smiles. But what if she remembered every detail? The shape of his handwriting on scraps of paper, the precise sound of his cough in the cold nights, the smell of ash in his coat. Such remembering would be a blessing and a curse. It would preserve him forever, so he would never truly be gone. Yet it would also mean never escaping the pain of losing him, never softening the wound with time's gentle erosion. And what of those she has hurt? The faces of enemies, of rivals, of those caught in her storms of anger and fear. To remember them all with clarity would be to face a gallery of sorrow. For behind each enemy's glare was a story, a reason, a heart. To carry them all in memory is to carry the weight of their humanity and the regret of what was broken. Would Marceline be able to forgive herself if every face reminded her of what she could have done differently? But then there are the faces of joy. Princess Bubblegum's smile, subtle yet radiant, warming Marceline's heart even when unspoken words stood between them. Finn's eager eyes filled with trust, Jake's lazy grin always ready to turn heaviness into lightness. To remember them all in detail would be to carry a treasury, a cathedral built of love and laughter. It might be overwhelming, yes, but it might also be beautiful, like walking forever inside a song composed of human connection. Memory is not passive. It shapes the way we see others in the present. If Marceline remembered every detail of every person, she might become endlessly compassionate, understanding that no one is simple, that every action grows from a long history of hidden hurts and quiet hopes. She would see the child inside every enemy, the sorrow behind every smile. But would such clarity make her stronger or break her? Let us pause and imagine. Suppose Marceline stands before a face in the meadow. It is a small child, one she barely recalls from a ruined city long ago, a stranger she once shared food with. She remembers now in perfect detail the child's cracked lips, their trembling hands, the way they whispered thank you before vanishing into the smoke. She had forgotten this until now. What is she to do with this memory? It cannot be changed. The child's fate is sealed, yet to remember is to give them life again, if only in her heart. Perhaps this is what it means to truly honor others, not to let their faces fade, but to carry them even when it hurts. The meadow shifts. The faces rise higher, surrounding her, glowing softly. She closes her eyes. She feels them pressing close, not with malice, but with longing. For to be remembered is to live again, if only for a moment. Each face whispers, "Do not forget me," and in this moment, Marceline realizes the paradox of remembering everything.
It is both unbearable and sacred.
Each face is a weight, yes, but also a flame. To remember everyone is to hold countless candles in the dark. Now imagine her sitting by her window in the quiet hours, playing her bass. With each note, a face comes back to her. She does not choose them. They arrive on their own, summoned by melody.
A stranger from centuries ago, a friend she lost, a lover she hurt.
Each face listens, and for a moment they are all together, bound by music. In that space she is not haunted. She is a storyteller, a keeper of lives. Her music becomes a bridge between the present and the remembered. Yet even here, a question lingers. If Marceline remembered every face, would she ever feel truly alone? Or would solitude vanish forever, replaced by the constant presence of others in her memory? Some might call this a gift. Others, a prison. Loneliness, after all, is painful, but it is also peaceful. Without forgetting, there is no silence, no rest from the company of others. To carry everyone at once might mean never hearing her own voice clearly again. But perhaps she would learn to make peace with it. Perhaps she would discover that she is not a single flame, but part of a great constellation of souls. Each face remembered is a star, and together they form a sky within her. When she looks inward, she sees not darkness, but galaxies of those she has known. This is not loneliness. It is belonging. The meadow begins to fade now, dissolving into mist as the horizon brightens. Marceline steps forward, and the faces bow their heads in silence. She carries them with her, but they no longer press heavily. They rest quietly within her, like seeds in soil, waiting to bloom again when she calls upon them. What if Marceline remembered everyone perfectly?
Perhaps she would weep beneath the weight of it.
Perhaps she would shine brighter because of it. Perhaps both. For sorrow and joy are not opposites. They are woven threads in the same tapestry. As the mist thins and dawn approaches, another question stirs. If remembering others can be both a burden and a blessing, what of remembering not just people, but entire worlds? The landscapes of the past, the ruins, the cities, the skies that no longer exist? The faces fade, and in their place rise forgotten places, forgotten times. Marceline stands at the threshold of memory's vast geography. Pause. And so we step with her into the next wonder. The forest is quiet tonight, hushed beneath a silver canopy of stars. A stream trickles softly nearby, and its sound is like a gentle metronome, steady, patient, eternal. Pause. Marceline sits upon a rock by the water's edge, her bass across her knees. She plucks one string, and the sound hums through the stillness, resonant and low. Music is memory. Each note is a vessel carrying fragments of the past. Some songs are lullabies filled with tenderness. Others are sharp with grief, burning with the ache of things lost. For Marceline, music has always been more than sound. It has been her diary, her language, her sanctuary. But what if she remembered every song she ever sang, every note she ever played? What if the full library of her music stretched endlessly within her, never dimmed, never forgotten? The thought is dizzying. Imagine closing your eyes and hearing not one melody, but thousands layered at once. Songs from centuries ago, half-sung whispers to herself, improvisations strummed in empty ruins, duets with companions long gone. To carry them all would be like standing in a hall of echoes, where every wall resounds with her voice, past and present, overlapping until time itself dissolves. Would it be unbearable, or would it be transcendent, a chorus of selves singing together across eternity? Songs are not only sound, they are memory etched into rhythm and tone. That lullaby Simon once hummed to her when the world outside was crumbling. She remembers fragments of it now, but what if she remembered all of it? Every inflection of his voice, every pause he took between verses. She could play it perfectly, as though he were beside her again. And yet, to recall it in such detail would bring both warmth and pain. For every note remembered would remind her of what she lost. A song can resurrect the past, but it cannot hold it. The music fades even as the memory sharpens. Consider, too, the songs she sang in anger. The biting lyrics aimed at Princess Bubblegum when their love was tangled in misunderstandings and pride. To remember them vividly would be to reopen old wounds, to hear again the sharpness of her own voice when it cut too deep. Yet even here lies something sacred. Songs of anger are also songs of truth, expressions of feelings too heavy for silence. If Marceline remembered them all, she might weep, but she might also grow, for music never lies. It tells her who she was even when she tried to hide it. Let us imagine the stream beside her becoming an orchestra. Each drop of water strikes a different note, and together they form a melody. In her mind, Marceline layers her own music upon it, and suddenly the forest is alive with sound. The songs of her past rise to meet her. A lullaby, a battle cry, a love song, a mournful dirge. They circle her like fireflies, glowing with the energy of memory. Would she be able to listen to them all at once? Or would she collapse beneath the sheer density of sound? Perhaps she would learn to weave them together, turning chaos into symphony, or think of music as a river. Each song is a droplet, carried along, merging, dividing, returning to the sea. Marceline's music stretches across centuries, flowing endlessly. To remember all her songs perfectly would be to trace every droplet, to see the river not as one movement, but as countless individual streams. Would she drown in the detail? Or would she, for the first time, see the river's full beauty? We who are mortal forget most of the songs we hear. We hum fragments, recall choruses, but rarely the whole. Our forgetting is merciful, giving us space for new melodies. But Marceline, remembering everything, would have no such silence. Every tune would return to her, ready to be replayed at will. Imagine her sitting in silence, and within that silence, hearing music from 1,000 years ago, clear as though it had just been played. Would she ever know quiet again? Or would her life become one endless concert, every memory a performance? And yet, perhaps that is what she was meant for. Perhaps her immortality is not meant to be endured in silence, but sung through in endless harmony. Music has always been her bridge, her way of turning pain into beauty, loneliness into connection. If she remembered every song, then perhaps she could weave them together into something greater, a tapestry of sound that tells the story of all she has lived. It would be too much for one person to bear. Yes, but Marceline is no ordinary person. She is a song herself, written across time, let us step deeper. Imagine Marceline holding her bass, closing her eyes and playing a note. In that single vibration, she hears not only the present, but the echo of every time she has ever played that same note before. Each strum becomes a portal, opening dozens of doors into her past. One chord recalls laughter in the woods. Another recalls the silence after loss. Another recalls the warmth of playing beside friends. She's not merely playing, she is summoning. And perhaps this is the heart of remembering everything. Not to drown in it, but to choose which memory to call forward in each moment. Like selecting a note from an endless scale, the songs of memory do not exist in isolation. They are entwined with people, places, emotions.
A lullaby recalls Simon. A rebellious anthem recalls bubblegum.
A sad ballad recalls a lonely night. To remember the song is to remember the whole world that birthed it. Marceline would be carrying entire universes within her, summoned by strings and voice. Would that not make her a kind of living archive? A keeper of history, not written in books but sung in melodies? The forest stills again. Marceline plucks another string, and the sound hangs in the air like smoke. She feels the weight of her songs pressing inside her, and yet she does not resist. She lets them rise, for though they may overwhelm her, they also comfort her. Every song is proof that she lived, that she felt, that she dared to give her heart a voice. Perhaps that is the gift of remembering every song, not the burden of noise, but the assurance that nothing is ever truly lost. Each melody remains, waiting to be played again when the world needs it. The night deepens into a soft hush, and the stream continues its endless rhythm. Marceline lowers her bass and leans back, gazing at the stars. Above her, she imagines the constellations are notes, scattered across the heavens. Together they form a cosmic score written by time itself. She hums softly, and the universe hums back. What if Marceline remembered every song? She would become a living harmony, an endless echo. Her life would no longer be a sequence of moments, but a song without end, unfolding across centuries. Pause. And as we drift with her, another question stirs. If songs carry memory, what of silence? What if Marceline remembered the spaces between, the pauses, the quiet, the absences? The next chapter waits in silence, ready to be heard. The night folds inward. The stars dim, not extinguished, but softened, as though veiled by a thin layer of silk. The forest too quiets, its sounds receding until only the faint rustle of leaves remains. Pause. Marceline closes her eyes, not to drift away but to listen. Listen not to sound, but to the spaces between sound. Silence. It is an odd thing, often mistaken for emptiness. Yet silence has a texture, a presence as real as any melody. Marceline has always filled her world with music, with laughter, with noise that drowns the ache of loneliness. But what if she remembered every silence she ever experienced? Not just absence, but the shape and weight of silence itself, every pause between notes, every moment when words failed, every stillness that followed grief. To remember every silence is not the same as remembering songs or faces. Songs are alive with rhythm, faces are vivid with detail, but silence carries emotion differently. It is the canvas on which everything else is painted. It holds echoes long after sound fades. Marceline recalls, faintly, the silence of the ruined world after the Mushroom War, the hush of a city emptied, the stillness that felt too large, too endless for a child to bear. What if she remembered it in perfect clarity? Every gust of wind rattling broken glass, every hollow absence where voices should have been. Would the silence itself haunt her more deeply than noise ever could? Silence is also intimate. She remembers, too, the quiet after arguments with bubblegum, those heavy moments when neither of them spoke, though everything important lingered unspoken. If Marceline remembered every silence like this, She would never escape the weight of words unsaid, and yet silence is not always sorrow. There were nights spent beneath the stars with friends beside her, where silence was a comfort, a silence not of absence but of presence. If Marceline remembered all of those, she would recall warmth. 2. The peace of knowing she did not need words to be understood. As let us picture her in her room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, Bass resting silently beside her. She does not play tonight. She lets silence stretch long and unbroken. And in that silence, memories rise, not of sound but of spaces. The silence after Simon's voice cracked and failed him. The silence of a friend holding her hand when grief stole all speech. The silence of looking into Bubblegum's eyes, knowing everything, saying nothing. The silence of the night sky, vast and eternal, reminding her how small she is. To remember them all is to see that silence is not one thing, but many. It is grief, it is love, it is awe, it is fear. Silence holds the shapes of all emotions. Philosophers often say that silence is the truest form of speech. Words can deceive, sounds can distract, but silence reveals what cannot be spoken. If Marceline remembered every silence perfectly, she would know truths too deep for language. But could she endure them? To live with such clarity might strip her of illusions. She would know without escape the silences of betrayal, of loss, of loneliness. Yet she would also know without doubt the silences of intimacy, of trust, of peace. Perhaps the pain and beauty would balance. Perhaps they would simply coexist as silence always has. Imagine silence as a frame.
Every song needs it. Every voice is cradled by it.
Without silence, music collapses into noise. Without silence, words blur into chaos. Silence is what makes sound meaningful. If Marceline remembered every silence, she would remember the framework of her entire life, the spaces that gave shape to everything else. She would see not only what was spoken, but also what was left unsaid. Would that give her wisdom? Would it overwhelm her? Perhaps both. Let us step deeper. Pause. Think of silence as a mirror.
It reflects the listener's own heart.
In joy, silence feels bright and open. In sorrow, silence feels heavy, oppressive. To remember every silence is to remember every reflection of her own soul across time. Marceline would see herself clearly, not only through words or music, but through what she felt in the absence of them. This is frightening, for silence does not lie. It reveals us to ourselves. Picture her again, but this time not in her room. She is outside, beneath a vast night sky. She sits on a hill surrounded by stillness. The air is cold, the grass damp. She listens. At first there is nothing. Then she realizes silence is never empty. It contains the faint hum of the earth, the distant rhythm of her own breath, the steady pulse of her heart. Silence is not absence. It is presence, subtle and profound. If she remembered every silence like this, perhaps she would no longer fear it. She would see it not as emptiness, but as fullness, waiting quietly beneath sound. And yet, silence can wound. To recall the silence after Simon walked away, unable to bear himself any more, would cut deep. To remember the silence of nights spent alone, convinced no one would ever truly stay, would ache in her bones. Silence has always been both balm and blade. To carry them all without forgetting would be to hold countless contradictions inside her. But maybe that is the point. Silence is not meant to be resolved. It is meant to be lived with. What if silence itself were music? What if, in remembering every silence, Marceline discovered a new kind of song, one without notes, composed entirely of pauses and rests? Perhaps she would learn to play it, letting silence stretch like melody, teaching others to hear its subtle beauty. This is the wisdom silence offers. It is not nothingness. It is possibility. A pause is the space where the next note is born. The night stretches on and silence deepens.
Marceline does not resist it.
She closes her eyes and lets it cradle her, as though she were floating on a vast, quiet sea. Each silence she has ever known gathers around her, not as ghosts, but as companions.
They do not demand.
They simply rest with her, like friends, sitting together in wordless understanding. If she remembered every silence, perhaps she would realize this truth. Silence is never her enemy. It has always been her companion, waiting patiently for her to notice it. Dawn begins to brush the sky with pale light. The silence changes, no longer the silence of night, but the hush before morning birdsong. Marceline feels it settle in her chest. She knows she will carry it with her. Every silence is different, yet all are connected. What if she remembered them all? She would realize that silence is not absence, but presence in disguise. She would remember that silence shaped her just as much as music, faces, or words. And as the first bird begins to sing, the silence shifts again. It does not end, it transforms. We follow her into that transformation, into the next reflection. Time in the land of Oo does not move in a straight line. It twists, coils, and loops like rivers that cross and merge again. For most, it is experienced in fragments, a childhood here, an adulthood there, with memory fading as years pass. But Marceline, she is different. She remembers longer than most. Her life stretches far beyond the span of ordinary beings. And sometimes, in quiet hours, she feels the weight of eternity pressing against her. But what if she remembered eternity itself? Not just her own years, but the endless unfolding of time, every rise and fall, every age and silence. What if memory was not limited by her own life, but extended across centuries and beyond, into the vast fabric of forever? To remember eternity is not like recalling a story. Stories have beginnings, middles, and endings. Eternity does not end. It stretches outward, without boundary, without conclusion. To hold that in memory would be to hold infinity itself. Imagine it for a moment. Every dawn that ever broke,
Every dusk that ever dimmed, every star born, every star extinguished,
every silence of night, every whisper of wind. Eternity is heavy not because of any single moment, but because of its ceaselessness. A river that never stops flowing, a sky that never ceases expanding. If Marceline remembered it all, would she still be herself, or would she dissolve into the endlessness she carried? Eternity is both burden and gift. It is the gift of seeing deeply, of knowing patterns hidden from shorter lives. With it one understands that all things rise and fall. Nothing remains unchanged. Empires crumble, forests regrow, rivers carve valleys, mountains erode to dust. To remember eternity is to see that no sorrow lasts forever, and no joy either, but the burden is just as profound. For with eternity remembered, one must endure all loss again and again with no final escape. Friends vanish, loves fade, generations pass, and she remembers them all. Each joy is tempered by the knowledge that it cannot last. Each sorrow is magnified by the fact that it will repeat. Let us imagine Marceline sitting by a window long after midnight. The world outside is still. She has a cup of tea cooling beside her. Her gaze is distant, not fixed on the present, but stretching across ages. In her mind, centuries pass like shadows. She remembers forests where deserts now lie. She remembers oceans that once were valleys. She remembers faces whose names no one speaks anymore. This is eternity, pressing softly at the edges of her awareness. She is a thread in its fabric, and she feels the endless loom weaving onward, indifferent to her longing or her grief. If she remembered eternity perfectly, would she ever speak again? Or would words feel too small to carry such vastness? Philosophers in many worlds say that eternity is not time unending, but the timelessness of the present, the eternal now. To remember eternity, then, is not to recall every moment stretched infinitely, but to sink into the presence that underlies all moments. Perhaps this is what Marceline would discover.
That eternity is not far away, not in the unreachable future, but here.
In the silence of her room, in the breath she takes now, in the stillness that never departs. If she remembered this eternity, she might find peace, for she would know she is always home, no matter where she wanders. Yet eternity can be crushing. To hold it consciously is to feel small, fragile, almost invisible. Imagine standing beneath a night sky so wide it seems to erase you. To remember eternity is to stand beneath that sky forever, knowing your song is but a whisper in a cosmic choir. Would Marceline feel diminished, or would she realize that even a whisper matters because eternity itself is made of whispers, moments small and vast, all woven together? Eternity does not erase the individual. It requires them. Without each note, the song could not exist. Consider too how eternity bends love. If she remembered eternity, she would know that every bond she formed is temporary. And yet, she would also know that every bond, however brief, is eternal in its own way.
A single smile, a single gesture of kindness echoes across time, shaping futures unseen.
To hold eternity is to see that nothing is ever truly lost. It changes, it transforms, but it remains within the fabric of forever. Perhaps this would comfort her. Perhaps it would break her.
Likely both. Pause. Now imagine her walking through an ancient ruin.
Stone walls crumble, vines weave through cracks, moss softens broken steps. To others, it is a relic, forgotten. To Marceline, it is alive with memory. She remembers the laughter of those who built it. She remembers storms that battered it. She remembers generations passing through, unaware of those who came before. Eternity breathes through the ruin, whispering, "All things change, and all things remain." If she remembered eternity fully, every place she touched would carry such voices. A forest would not just be trees, it would be centuries of growth, fire, regrowth again. A river would not just be water, it would be millennia carving stone. Eternity is inscribed in every inch of the world, waiting to be seen. Would such memory free her from fear? Or would it overwhelm her, drowning her in the immensity of existence? Eternity also reshapes identity. To remember eternity is to see oneself not as one being, but as many, unfolding across time.
Marceline the child, Marceline the wanderer, Marceline the queen of her own loneliness, Marceline the friend, the lover, the daughter. All of them are threads in the same tapestry. None are lost. All remain woven into the eternal whole. If she remembered eternity, she would see she is not one thing, but all things she has ever been, and all she will ever become.
This is both liberation and weight, for to be infinite is to be ungraspable even to oneself. There is a story told by dreamers that eternity is not linear but circular, that all moments exist at once, and to touch eternity is to see them overlapping. If Marceline remembered this, she might find herself standing in many lives at once, child beside Simon, warrior with her axe, lover at Bubblegum's side, wanderer in a lonely wasteland. All versions of her present together, coexisting, none erased. This is eternity's paradox. Everything passes, yet everything remains. Now let us sit with her once more. She sets her teacup aside, leans back, and closes her eyes. She does not resist eternity tonight. She lets it wash over her, a tide that never recedes. She feels herself dissolve into the endless, then reform again, not smaller, but wider. If she remembered eternity fully, perhaps she would finally see that her music is not just her own. Each note she plays, each song she sings carries the echo of all time within it. Eternity is not something apart from her. It sings through her, as it does through all beings. The sky outside begins to pale. Another dawn, one of countless before, countless to come. Marceline opens her eyes. The weight of eternity is still there, but she does not flinch. She sips her tea, lukewarm now, and smiles faintly. What if she remembered eternity? Perhaps she already does, in fragments. Perhaps we all do, in those moments when time feels suspended, when presence fills us so completely that the world seems infinite.
Eternity is not fun.
It is here, always. Remembering it is not a curse, but an awakening. And so, with the quiet of dawn, Marceline rises, carrying the memory of eternity as both burden and gift. The night is soft and the world is hushed. The stars above glow faintly, like lanterns strung across a vast and silent ceiling. The wind moves through fields of wildflowers, brushing petals as if turning the pages of a secret book. And somewhere, in this gentle stillness, Marceline rests her head, closing her eyes. What if she remembered everything? Not only her own story, not only the echoes of eternity, but the dream that underlies it all? A dream vast enough to contain every song, every tear, every flicker of light and shadow. A dream that remembers us even when we forget ourselves. Dreams are not bound by rules. They flow, merge, and reshape without warning. To step into the dream that remembers us is to step beyond the limits of linear memory, beyond the fragile scaffolding of human recollection.
It is to enter a realm where everything we are and everything we could have been
still exists, waiting. If Marceline remembered this dream, she would remember not just the past or the endless future, but the secret why behind it all. The reason songs matter. The reason stories endure. The reason love, fragile as it is, shines brighter than despair. Pause, imagine it. The dream as a vast ocean, black as ink yet shimmering with infinite colors beneath the surface. Each ripple is a memory, each wave a life. Marceline floats upon this sea, and as she drifts, the dream remembers her. It recalls her laughter, her sorrow, her battles, her silences. It recalls every note of her music, each vibrating still in its depths. The dream does not forget.
Even when she does, even when centuries blur.
Even when grief clouds her heart, the dream keeps her whole, safe, intact. This is the final remembrance, that we are remembered.
Always, but what is a dream that remembers?
Perhaps it is simply existence itself, holding all things. Perhaps it is consciousness, the great mystery, in which each of us arises and fades like sparks in the dark. Or perhaps it is love, that ancient current beneath everything soft and eternal, carrying us onward. If Marceline remembered this dream, she might understand that nothing is ever lost. No song fades completely, no face is erased. Even the smallest kindness, an apple shared, a hand held, a whispered word, lives forever within the dream's embrace. The dream does not distinguish between joy and sorrow. It holds them both equally tenderly. It remembers Marceline's loneliness in an empty wasteland. It remembers her laughter beside friends. It remembers the ache of losing Simon, the warmth of finding him again in fleeting ways. Every shadow, every light, all recorded. Would this comfort her, to know she can never truly vanish? Or would it unsettle her to realize even her darkest moments remain never erased? But perhaps the dream does not judge. It remembers, but with gentleness. It does not hold moments as chains. It holds them as songs, unfinished, unending, weaving together into a harmony too vast to hear fully. Pause. Let us walk with Marceline one final time into this dream. She drifts through a landscape shifting between memory and possibility. At one moment she stands in the Ice King's ruined library, Simon's hand on her shoulder. In the next, she is by Bubblegum's side, the scent of sugar and smoke mingling in the air. Then she is a child again, clutching Hambo, her small fingers trembling with need. The dream holds all of these, all at once, And as she walks, she realizes she is not merely inside the dream. She is part of it. She is remembered because she is the dream itself, expressing as song, as story,
as memory. This is the secret all along. We are remembered because we are the remembering. In this realization, the fear of forgetting dissolves.
What if Marceline remembered everything? Then she would see that forgetting is not failure. It is only the surface of the river rippling and changing. Beneath, the current flows unbroken. The dream remembers even when she does not. She does not need to cling to every moment desperately. She can let them pass like leaves on water, knowing they are never truly gone. The dream holds them. The dream holds her, and so her burden becomes lighter. Eternity is not a crushing weight.
It is a cradle. Now imagine her singing within this dream.
Her voice, low and gentle, carries across endless distances. The song is not for anyone in particular, yet it reaches everyone. It is the song of remembering. It tells of sorrow, of joy, of silence, of storms, of beginnings, of endings. And as it flows, the dream itself hums back, harmonizing with her. Her song becomes part of the dream, inseparable. And when future beings wander the ruins of when they hum to themselves without knowing why, they may be humming echoes of Marceline's voice. For the dream that remembers us does not forget a single note. What then is left to fear? Not death, for even death is remembered. Not loneliness, for every connection lives on in the dream. Not time, for time itself is only a strand in the greater weaving. What remains is only to live fully, tenderly, courageously, knowing that nothing is ever lost. Each moment, however fleeting, ripples outward forever. Each love, however fragile, is eternal in the dream. If Marceline remembered this, perhaps she would smile more softly. Perhaps her songs would carry not just longing, but peace. Pause. The stars begin to fade. The horizon glows faintly with morning light. The dream does not end with dawn, but it shifts, blending seamlessly into waking life. For waking and dreaming are not opposites. They are threads of the same tapestry. The dream that remembers us never ceases, whether our eyes are open or closed. Marceline stirs. She takes her axe base in hand. She does not play yet, but she feels the strings beneath her fingers, cool and waiting. She knows that when she plays, the dream will echo back. She is never alone. And so we leave her here, at the threshold of day, standing between memory and forgetting, between song and silence. She has remembered everything, and in doing so discovered she does not need to hold it all herself. The dream holds her, holds us all. What if Marceline remembered everything? Then she would know what we too can sense in our quietest hours, that life is not measured by what we cling to, but by what we allow to flow through us. That forgetting is not loss, but trust. Trust that the dream remembers. Trust that we are carried always. And so we have wandered together through 10 chapters of what could have been. We traced Marceline's forgotten lullabies, her loves remembered and lost, her dreams of childhood, and even the vastness of eternity itself. We imagined what it would mean if she remembered everything, not only her own story, but the deep currents beneath all stories, the dream that holds us all. What we found is not sorrow, though sorrow was there. What we found is not only longing, though longing sang through it. What we found is gentleness, the knowing that nothing is ever truly lost. Each moment, each song, each friendship, each tear remains within the dream that remembers us. So if you find yourself forgetting, do not fear. Forgetting is not the end. The dream remembers for you. It carries what you cannot hold. It keeps safe what slips through your fingers. Close your eyes now. Feel the hush around you. Let memory fade, let time drift, let eternity cradle you. You are remembered, always. All's good night. May you rest as the dream remembers you.